Hey guys, it's Chris with Tech5. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to build a PC in 2020. Now, this is going to be a budget build PC, and I have been talking about doing this on the channel for a while now, but now it's finally here. Now, I do want to throw out some disclaimers for you guys because I did have some issues along the way. Not building the PC, it's definitely not my first time, not my first rodeo building a PC, but I had some production obstacles that went on. And I tried to live stream this thing and then come back, throw some edits on it, and then put it on YouTube, which that's where my issues came into play. I had audio issues because I did a different method of capturing my audio and it ended up not working out, and I had no idea that it wasn't working even though it showed that it was working. So that was bad. My camera died on me midway through the build, so I lost one of my camera angles, and also my camera angle could have been much better, but kind of like an ignorance thing. I know better now, so now I will do better. I'm just gonna have to get another piece of equipment for an actual overhead angle because the little jerry rig thing I tried to do didn't work out. So I promise I'll do better. Just stick around, guys. Don't give up on me, I promise. I swear that I will continue to push to improve and do better, and that's one of the things I want to be. A pillar YouTube channel, a pillar tech YouTube channel specifically. So I will continue to do better. Just work with me, guys. Don't grill me too hard. So hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? Here we are on Tech5. Today we are going to be doing a budget build PC. I'm going to show you guys step-by-steps on how you can build a budget PC if you're wanting to do that. But I'm going to show you guys the equipment that we're working with today. Keep in mind, this is a budget build for you guys that are wanting to get into the PC space. If you guys are interested in that, if something you're wanting to do, got a little tutorial how you guys can build your own PC if that's something you're wanting to do. So I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna be doing that today. Hope you guys enjoy. Stick around. So what we're gonna want to do first, we're gonna clean our workspace. Obviously, it's gonna be something we're gonna want to do. Get our workspace ready for building this PC. When you are building a PC, one of the things that you're going to want to do, or start with rather, is going to be your motherboard. So right here we got the B450 Pro. We are going to get this bad boy open. Now, before you do start touching PC parts, now one thing that you do want to keep in mind, you are going to want to be cognizant of ESD, electrostatic discharge. That is a real thing. It may not initially destroy your parts, but it can definitely lessen the life of your PC parts. So you want to definitely make sure that you're hooked up and grounded properly. Usually what you want to do is take your power supply, have it plugged in, and use your little clips and plug it into the rail and have your little ESD strap on your wrist, or you can have it on your ankle and have the power supply sitting on the ground. Now I am using an electro or anti-static mat and an electrostatic floor mat as well, so I'm not going to use these for today because I'm fairly protected and I'm going to risk it and be a bad example. So don't do as I say, not as I do type of scenario. So we got our motherboard here. Like I said, we got the B450 Pro 4. We got our IO shield. I want to keep track of that. We got a SATA cable. Now we've got a M.2 screw. You want to keep track of this. This is going to be something that we're going to need for later because we are using an M.2 storage. So we got the motherboard here in its anti-static packaging. One thing to help with like kind of a building area you want to do is actually use the motherboard space to help you when you are putting components into your motherboard. So we're gonna leave the motherboard right here. We're just gonna have it on top, and I'll actually switch to top down so you guys can see. So what we're gonna do is start with our CPU. CPU is going to be the first thing that we're going to plug into this motherboard. Try to keep your build area as clean as possible so you don't lose track of things as well. Kind of being scatterbrained at the second. So let's see, we've got our CPU here. We are using the Ryzen 3100. CPUs are very fragile. They have pins on the back of them, and if you do bend one of these pins, you can definitely mess up the CPU indefinitely. So you don't want to bend these pins. You want to keep it in a safe spot, and its little container that it comes in is usually a good spot to have it in, so you don't end up breaking something, because if you do end up bending a pin, your CPU's most likely going to be garbage. So make sure you don't bend pins. Another thing that you want to make sure you do is with the motherboard, there is a little triangle for to kind of let you know the orientation of your CPU. So the little triangle there, you'll want to match up with the CPU that you're plugging in. Now there's a little arm. We're going to lift that arm here. And once that arm is lifted, we can go ahead and start trying to put in our CPU. Now, like I said, you're going to want to look for the little arrow. It's in the corner. You're going to want to look for the little arrow on the motherboard as well. So we'll drop that in, let it slide in. Don't try to force it, let it drop in. Once it's in there, you can drop the arm down. Then you're good to go. Now from there, we're going to put on our CPU cooler. You absolutely have to have a CPU cooler on your CPU. Your motherboard will not power on without it. It will not post. Actually, it will power on, but it won't post. It will say no CPU cooler was detected. Now, this one does come with thermal paste on it already. Now, it's going to be a little gray liquid type of stuff, and this helps with the thermal conductivity to help pass the heat from the CPU to the heat sink and be cooled by the fans here. So that's how that kind of works out right there. So what we're going to do is we actually have to take off some screws here. So we are going to need to get into our little handy dandy kit. So what we're doing right now is taking off some bracket screws. And a little pro tip, I have a little cup thing here that is magnetic, so I don't lose any sort of screws or bolts or anything. Pretty good to have. I would definitely recommend it. Alright, so now we got the brackets off. So at this point, what we can do is start to put on our CPU cooler. So what we'll do here is put this in the best orientation. Now what you want to do is kind of line it up with the screw blocks here. So don't try to screw in anything just yet, just get it lined up. A good way to kind of remember it, that with this particular CPU, the AMD logo will be towards the back of the motherboard. So you'll know if it doesn't fit in, there'll be a problem. You'll be able to figure it out pretty easily. So just when you do that, Then we are gonna go ahead and start to screw it down just slightly. We're not gonna get too crazy. We don't want to crank it down just yet. So apply a little bit of pressure, get a little bit of screws threaded in, and we're gonna alternate sides. We're not putting too much pressure down, we're just trying to get the thread started just a little bit. Alright, so all of them are in now, so now we can start to crank it down just a little bit. Again, you do want to alternate when you're doing this, so be sure you don't just go in a circle doing this. You want to alternate. Once you get a little bit of resistance is where you want to stop. You don't want to crank this down super hard. So now what we're going to do is look for the fan port that's labeled CPU fan. So we're going to plug that into that CPU fan and drop that in there. And then if you want to get fancy with it, you can try to fold up your CPU fan wire a little bit so you can get a little bit of cable management going. Tuck it in there. It'll be alright. It's pretty resilient. So CPU's installed. So now what we'll actually move on to is going to be the RAM. Now we are using the Oloy. Is that what it is? Oloy? I don't know. It's some RAM with an owl for their logo. We're going to be using that. So let's get this bad boy open. And this is going to be DDR4 3200 megahertz. What up? Alright, so now it's budget build, guys, so we don't have a bunch of RGB for this thing. So, you know, I'm sorry if that's what you were wanting, but budget builds typically don't come with a bunch of RGB. That's just the name of the game. So that's what we got right now. So what we want to do, we are going to plug this into the DIMM slots here. So we've got 4 slots on this particular board. So usually what you're going to want to do is go ahead and go with the channel that's closest to the motherboard for your first DIMM slot. And the proper way to know if you're going the right way, orientation, is lining up the DIMM slots. So if you try to come down with it and you don't see the little indentation there matching up to where it is on the board, then you don't have it the right way. You'll get that notch lined up. Once it's lined up, then you'll give the RAM a good push, and you should hear a click. So moving on to the next DIMM slot. So since this is going to be a dual channel, there are 4 channels on this particular board. You want to make sure it's spaced out. So what we're going to be doing is going another slot over. And once we're that, well, looks like it's just the front camera because that camera just died. So we're gonna put the next stick in. We've got it. So now we have both of our RAM sticks in and we're looking good. Now we are using an NVMe drive. We've got our little NVMe drive right here. This is what we're going to be using. Let's get this bad boy open. Now I mentioned that little M.2 screw earlier that we wanted to keep. Hopefully you didn't throw it away. Kept track of it. It's a little smaller bugger, so it's easy to lose. Now this is what it looks like. Really small. It's got a little notch on the end of this one as well. So what we're going to want to do here is there's going to be a M.2 slot on your board. Now for this particular board it says Ultra M.2. So what we're going to be doing is matching this little slot here with a little notch on the board. So you'll plug that in just slightly. When you do have it in, you'll see it kind of like this right here, just raised up just a little bit. And that's where that screw kind of comes into play. So our little bitty screw that we got in our little bitty bag, and this is a magnetic tip, so it's actually really helpful with stuff like this. So now, since we've got that plugged in. We'll push it down just a little bit. There's a little bitty standoff that it should line up with. And you don't want to crank this one down too hard. You just need to get it on there sturdy. And once it's on there, it's in the slot, we're good to go. Now, we've got everything on the motherboard that has to be on there, or it's best to put it on there before you start messing with the case. So now that we've got that there, we're gonna actually move to the case. Now we are using the Cooler Master Box Q300L. It's a pretty decent looking case, to be honest with you. Only about, I think it was like 50 bucks. But it's not a bad one. It really is. Really not a bad looking case. Let this guy come on out. Come on out of here, boy. Yeah. Here we go. Now with all this stuff, put it back in the box. So when you are trying to get into your case, typically there's going to be a side panel that you need to take off. And for this one, it's a little plastic filmy side panel, which it's a budget case. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not like high grade glass, tempered glass or anything. So like I said, we can easily just drop that back in our box. It can sit there while we do some work. We're gonna get into our case here. Now, what we got here? We've got another dust filter on this thing. We don't need that just yet. So we'll put that back on the case, in the case box. Another dust filter. Don't need that just yet, so that'll go back there. We got another. So right here we've got another side panel that we're gonna take off. This one's not actually a thumb screw, or if it is, it's too tight to thumb off. So that's okay. We got tools for this. We got tools. We got beam, screen. All right. There's a little slot on this particular case to easily pull this up. Side panel. Set it in the box. So now what we have here is a blank canvas of delight, really. I mean, we're good to go. Now I will point out, definitely one thing I wasn't aware of when I first went to get this case. It does not come with intake fans, which is a problem. You do want intake fans. It only has a exhaust fan, just one, singular. And you're gonna want more than one. So definitely, if you do pick up this case here, you're going to want to get some exhaust or intake fans for it. So I do have some extras that I'm actually gonna put on here, so it's no big deal for me. But for you guys, if you decide to build this PC, you are gonna need some case fans. And they don't have to be RGB, they don't have to be expensive ones. Just get some regular ones. Now, cases typically do come with little zip ties and screws for the standoffs, and that's for the motherboard. So don't lose any of the materials that you got in here. You're gonna want those, you're gonna need them for later. Just kind of making sure we have a blank canvas to work in right here. So you're gonna want to put in your IO shield. So you should have a little silver looking thing that looks kind of like this. It's the IO shield. You're gonna put that into the PC case and it should snap in pretty easy. Just have to give it a little bit of pressure, line it up with the holes. Snap, snap. now we can drop in the motherboard. So we're gonna do that. Now there's gonna be standoffs. Now it's possible that there may not be all the standoffs on your PC case that you have. And if that's the case, you're actually gonna want to go back into your hardware and find all of those standoffs. And that happens to be the case for this case, so I've got to go into my hardware and find some standoff screws. Standoff screws they don't have a head on them. And what the standoffs do is just make sure there's separation from the metal part of the case to the motherboard. That's why they call it a standoff. And there needs to be a standoff for each and every hole that you have for your motherboard. Alright, I think that we've got all the standoffs here, but I think we may, no, we're good. Okay, so, alright, so now we have that in there. Now we're going to start screwing the motherboard to the PC case. There should be certain screws in here that are they're flat and rounded, and these are going to be just for the motherboard, putting the motherboard and the PC case together. Some of those standoffs that weren't screwed down very good earlier are getting screwed in now. Now motherboard is in there securely. Now we can move on to other things like the power supply. Now, we are using a 500 watt thermal tape power supply. It is a non-modular power supply. And that's what you typically get when you run a 500 watt power supply. They're usually not modular. And modular, if you're not aware, just means that it's interchangeable. The parts, the plugs, all of the power cables that come with it can actually be interchanged. It can be taken away. With these are fixed cables. They cannot be taken out. When they are there, or what it comes with it is what is there. That's what stays. Now you can see that it's modular here because the cables are fixed to this power supply just like this. They come out of the slot. They will not move. It does not go anywhere. It's stuck there. That's what makes it non-modular. Now, semi-modular means that some plugs can be removed. And it comes with some that can be removed and then a lot that cannot. And we'll throw that into the PC case because that is the holder of all things. Now, got a couple different options with this. You can install the power supply upside down, or you can do it upright. So we're going to actually flip this upside down, and the reason that we're going to do that is because we don't want to be taking air away from our GPU. So the GPU that we're going to be putting in there is going to be pulling air up from the bottom. Now if I give you guys a better look, if I were to put this power supply in here this way, then the air that's coming through here going to the GPU trying to take the air, well, you've got two different fans going two different directions, so one's pulling air up and one's pulling it down. You're going to be fighting for air. So instead of doing that, we're actually going to flip this power supply upside down and going to let it have its own free flow from the bottom of the case, pulling from the bottom. So right now we are just going ahead and getting this tie off of these cables, getting it ready to sled it into the case. But what we got to do here is actually plug in the HD audio, which is going to be on the far left here. So you'll be looking at the little ports there. If there's one of the little holes missing, usually the HD audio text will be up, so you can easily just slide it in. And like I said, that's typically going to be the far left one, so we'll plug that in, slide that in there. And so Like I said, concerned about the cable management, so we'll go ahead and plug in the USB 3, which is going to be the fat looking cord that comes with your PC case. Typically you'll see these things there. It's flat. It's got about 20 pins. You should be able to find that on the motherboard. Just line it up. It'll say USB 3.0. There's a little notch in it to help you line it up. You want to be careful with that one too. I've actually bent some pins on that. So be easy with that 3.0. It can be a little bugger for sure. And then lastly, we have the powers, which we don't have to mess with right now. The case power supply won't get in the way of that one. So we're gonna put the power supply in. Slide that bad girl in. So this is a budget build. This is about a $500 build. Now, I will say it definitely does cost a bit more right now because prices are inflated because of everything that's going on. Normal prices though, this is about 500 bucks. And it's a pretty solid one. It'll let you play everything on 1080p. So you can get a pretty good experience. Still just the same, even with the budget build. So it's not bad at all. 1650 Super isn't a bad card. Honestly, this is my first budget build to do. Usually I'm pretty spoiled and I'll spend way more money than I should. Like on my main rig, I've got a 2080 Ti in it. Been trying to get the new cards, but that's not worked out at all. Because prices and availability are not stacking up. Getting scalped like crazy right now. So we're gonna try to continue this whole cable management before we start putting in the GPU. We got a little slot in here. We have some cable extensions that we're gonna actually use to try to accent the build a little bit. So we're gonna try to hide whatever cables we can. We're gonna route these cables out the back so we can manage them afterwards. So some of the downside of using non-modular power supplies. Some of these cables you just want to pull through and just be done with them, but you gotta be delicate. You don't want to mess up other stuff. So we got all the cables through there on that side. So at this point, we're actually gonna get the GPU out. 1650 Super. Let's open her up. This particular card does come with 4 gigabytes of VRAM and it is already overclocked. Like I said, this one's not a bad one. It'll pretty much run whatever you want to play. You know, you're not gonna run around playing Cyberpunk on ultra settings or anything, but you could still play Cyberpunk. You can easily play Fortnite, easily play Apex Legends, easily play any of those titles. So now what we're gonna be doing at this point is installing the GPU. Now there's gonna be brackets in the very back here of the case. This is actually where it will sit. There's a screw here that we actually need to remove so it can get slotted into its specific spot on the motherboard. Oh, okay, hold on a second. Wait a minute. So for this particular case, you've got to break some of these rivets on this thing to get it in there. That's different. So in order to actually put this card in, these little brackets back here have to actually be broken off. That's different. I've not seen that. I keep seeing different things with this case I've not seen before. Now this is going to be a 2-slot card, so for this particular case, we're going to be breaking off 2 of these little brackets. You just push them in, bend them a little bit, and they fall off. So, like I was saying earlier, just going to get this thing positioned correctly. Kind of like the RAM, there's a little notch in there. So you'll line up that notch and then just push it in. When you have got it in there secured, you'll hear a little snap. Make sure that's snapped in, and guys, we're getting there. Now what you're going to want to do for this particular case, it doesn't look, well, actually no, I take that back. So now we're going to want to put that little bracket that we got just a second ago that we took off at the start of this, we're going to want to put that back. Alright. So now, we're starting to get there. Now, what we're going to do at this point, we're going to install our cables, our additional cables that we've got for this thing. You know, before we do that, let's stop for a second. Let's put these fans in. I talked about earlier how this case is actually missing some fans, some intake fans, and that's pretty good. You definitely want to have intake fans. And before I get too crazy, just throwing fans everywhere on this thing, I'm trying to check and see just how many fan headers it's got. Okay, there's 2. Alright. So we are going to be putting on 2 140 millimeters Corsair purple LED fans. And we are going to put those at the front of the case like a swan. There's a good spot. So once you found your spot, for this particular case, this isn't typically how this goes. This case is a little odd. Usually there's specific slots for fans, but this case doesn't play by those kind of rules. My hopes are that this case or this PC makes somebody happy for Christmas. That's my hopes. Now if it doesn't end up going that way, you know, I'll probably just send it all back. But I've never seen a case like this. This is, I don't know. Like I literally have to bully my way around to try to find a place that I can put this case, so I can put this fan. Alright. So, now, we have 2 intake fans that are LED, purple LED, and 1 exhaust fan. You know, me personally, I would always like to overextend on my cooling solutions. We have not hooked up our fans yet. And now, at this point, what we're going to do is add these cables. And then we're going to get to cable management. At the same time of doing the cables. We'll figure it out. So what we've got here are black and purple cables. Black and purple cables. These are extension cables. These cables are not meant to be plugged directly into a motherboard if you do so happen to ever get any of these and you have a modular power supply, these are just extensions. Definitely don't just try to plug them straight into your power supply. These are just extensions. There's different companies like Cable Mod that produce really high quality cables, so you can actually plug them into the motherboard or the power supply directly, and go from there and kind of give yourself a little bit of a cleaner setup, I suppose, or a cleaner install, because you don't have to deal with the extra cables. So what we're going to do at this point, we've got our motherboard cable, and that is going to be the 24-pin cable. It's usually pretty long, pretty big like this. So what we're going to do is actually add some of these cable combs that we have to it to kind of straighten up these extensions that we've got. So what we're going to do is figure out the orientation that it actually clips in, and so we're going to figure that out so we can better dress it up, so we know what side is showing. So for the back side is what's going to actually be showing for this PC build, or for this cable installation. So the best and easiest way to do this is going to be starting with one side first, one layer first, putting all of those in, and then moving to the top. These can be a little bit annoying if you try to do it all at once, so don't do that. Doesn't work out. Probably going to be putting about 3 of them on here. So alright, so we've got 3 cable combs in there. At this point, what we're going to do is plug this one up into the motherboard. Make sure you get it in there good. Here, snap. Should see it like this. Then from there, what we're going to actually do is route it out the back. Little curve there on it. Then we'll come back here, plug it into the corresponding cable that it actually belongs to, that it's actually extending. So we'll plug that in. Snip snap, voila. And that one is done. Now we only have 2 more cables that we actually need to plug in here. It's going to be the CPU and the GPU. Now for the CPU one, looks like we are going to be dealing with a 8-pin cable. So same type of process. What we're going to do is go into here, find out what orientation it's actually going to be showing from. So it's going to be showing from, the clip's going to be at the top, so the bottom is going to be what's showing. So get our cable combs. We'll need about 2 of them this time. A lot less to actually fit together with this one. Same process, 1 layer at a time. This isn't necessary at all. Like, this isn't something you have to do. This is just a little extra thing to make it look a little bit better. Plug that in. Get it in there tight. And the goal here will be to actually feed it behind the motherboard and out of sight. So get them in there straight, looking good, and then yeah, on your way. Then you're gonna want to look for the cable that actually says CPU. They should be labeled. Plug that in, and guess what? So we only got one cable left. It's gonna look good. Now, like I said, we got one cable left, and it's just gonna be the CPU or the GPU. And that one is actually same process. Figure out which one's showing, show that backside. So we need the 3 cable cone for this. And this one will call for about 3 to 4. You'll just have to see. Wow. Let's plug that bad boy up. Snap! Hey. We are doing it. We're doing it today, guys. It's looking good. Looking real good. All right. Now, comes for some serious cable management. So, what we're gonna do, clean up the area. And what we might do before we actually do some cable management is actually plug everything in and then, you know, plug everything in, see the light show. Now for this, usually it's pretty tough to see, so these plugs can get annoying. Sometimes you can't tell. So when you can't tell, what you have to do is get the motherboard out. Motherboard manual. Check her out. Make sure the proper pins are plugged in. Alright, well, front panel's in. I wanna be the very best. No one ever was. We're gonna route this fan cable. Alright, we're gonna take these two up under. Wish I had like a little mini camera. That I could put underneath or inside the case. People could see what's happening as it's happening. There we go. That fan is in. And that fan's in. Now we got some fans. Alright. Everything's plugged up. Should we turn this thing on? See what it's looking like. icy in here. Icy. So we're gonna plug this into the back. Making sure that switch is on the little circle. Dang it. I gotta unplug this light. Forgive me. All right. We ready? Oh, I gotta flip the switch. Y'all thought it just didn't power on. That's what y'all thought. No. No. Not with me building it. It's gonna turn on. Here we are. So, I've got a bunch of cables back here that are not and will not be used for this particular build. So what are we gonna do with them? Well, we'll wrap them on up, put a zip tie to them boys. That's what we're gonna do. Like some good old boys. That's what we're gonna do. Oh yeah. Let's get this top down going. Oh. One of the cables eluded us. It's not in the wrap. Here. Keeping these cables kind of plugged in now. Being a little BIT, doesn't wanna get it. There we go. I got it now. Okay. Well, That's that'll do. Cables really weren't too difficult to manage right here. It's looking pretty clean. Where were you in? Were you this way? There we go. Nothing to it but to do it. Nothing to it but to do it. That's it. That's all you gotta do is just do it. And then it's done. The work is done. I won. At this point, what we're about to do is plug this little bad girl up to our main monitor, put some windows on her, see what she can really do, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I don't expect too much. All right, let's give it another appearance in its final form. We don't know on our kitty. Just love them and stroke them. Airflow should be pretty good on this particular setup. It's a very ventilated case, so that's gonna do it, guys. Okay guys, so that's the build. Now, as I said in the beginning of the video, I know there was some issues with the audio. For whatever reason, it seemed like moving around anything seemed to capture much louder than me even speaking. I don't understand why that was. There was just what seemed to be some continuous problems, but hopefully you guys still enjoyed. Like I said, my next one will be better. I promise, I promise, I promise. It'll be maybe sometime this coming week that I'll do another one. This one will be a little bit more expensive. It'll probably be in the $1,500 range. So if you guys want to see that, just know another one is coming. So get subscribed if you're not. And you know, I hope you guys enjoyed. Just, you know, don't grill me too hard. Don't flame me too much in the comments, guys. Guys, you know I got to give a shout out to my Patreon. I appreciate you guys so very much. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it. so very much. If you're a subscriber, I appreciate you also. And if you've watched this video this far and you're just a viewer, thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it, I really do. That's gonna do it for the video. Now, if you do have any questions, concerns, confusions, whatever it may be, don't hesitate to ask. I don't mind helping, I promise. I'm really trying to build something for you guys here. I hope you want to be a part of it. A simple like, a share, subscribe, comment, they go so far for the video. It really helps me continue to make content and stay in this space and grow. Now, if there was something you didn't like and thought I could have done better, whatever it may be, feel free to leave a thumbs down. I just ask you let me know what it was so I can continue to improve and do better. Unless, of course, it was one of those things that I already know that I messed up on. I know where I messed up here. Just work with me. And with that said, I hope you can like, I hope you can subscribe. And if not, well, I hope to catch you in another one. And remember, it's a vibe. A tech vibe, specifically. We'll see you.